Hello, welcome back to the Single Malt Review. It's been a few episodes since our last look at a bourbon, so today we're diving in with a bit of a doozy.
Yes, we are. Skipping right over regular Maker's Mark for reasons which I will elucidate on later, and going straight to their recent-ish Maker's 46. And if someone knows exactly why it's called Maker's 46, they could let me know, because it's 47% alcohol by volume, so they seemed to me that they were so close to calling it something useful, and yet so far away. But I can't complain about an extra an extra 1% alcohol in my bourbon. So
slightly esoteric process on making this one.
Yes.
In that the regular barrels of Maker's Mark, after some maturation, have some staves of French oak added into them. So essentially,
toasted French oak staves, which I think they're sort of pushing bourbon regulation to the limit with this one, getting quite creative with it. But all the more power to them. As Scotch whisky people, they'll do all kinds of crazy things to maturing Scotch, and won't fall afoul of any particular rules. They do call it. Kentucky bourbon whiskey.
Well, yes, toasted
finished
oak.
with oak staves. So maybe there's a wrinkle in the rules there, as long as they mention what's happened to it.
Toasted oak stave is what your average bourbon barrel was made from. So it's just more barrel, I guess, greater surface area. So adding a bit of some extra maturation in what's essentially a fresh barrel without having to add a fresh barrel.
Either way, they've got away with it. Taxonomy of the bourbon, before we get too far down the hole on it, it's a Beam Suntory company. It's an interesting bourbon in that it contains no rye, and to fill that sort of void that left by the rye, they use winter wheat, which is just winter harvested wheat. Oh dear, Sybil, settle down.
So your camera is one of our cats has found something to play with, something noisy. It looks like a curtain toggle.
Well, she's knocked it off now, so hopefully that'll be the end of that racket. What was I saying? Yes, wheat as opposed to rye, and that's really what makes Maker's Mark its own thing. Not just another bourbon. It is in this sort of wildly different mash bill that makes it really quite unique to other ones.
Now, I'm quite fond of rye whiskey, but then again, I've had some very satisfactory wheat whiskey in the past too, so I'll be curious to see how that difference manifests.
Before you sort of spoil your nose there, things to look for in wheat spirit. Look for sort of maybe a little bit of anise, and look for a lot of quite clear, clean flavours. Okay. Whereas bourbon can be very spicy and very sort of cloying and sweet and syrupy. Maybe look for something a bit more fast, free-flowing flavour with the wheat. So, see what you think there.
Yeah, that is evoking some of the wheat spirit I've had before.
Goodness, it's for 47%. It is wickedly smooth.
Yeah,
there is no prickle whatsoever. That just dances across the nose there.
Fresh buttered white bread. Bit of toffee, some vanilla.
So yeah, it's a little bit difficult to describe. I think there's a lot of vanilla. It's just slightly lighter vanilla, almost like vanilla ice cream, rather than sort of the full-on vanilla pods.
It's a bit of a vanilla icing, or as some people might say, frosting.
Yeah,
and quite a bit of wood smoke. Some generous, some smoky oak.
There's a lot of char there. Charred barrels and charred staves as well going in here. So there's a lot of sort of char contact, which is where that sort of charred burnt wood is coming from. There's a lot of wood generally, as I guess you'd expect, because posting staves into an otherwise fresh barrel, that's a lot of wood surface area here. It's not quite. We'll be looking at one maybe a bit later on where they've tipped it into a completely new barrel halfway through, but this is getting kind of close there. So if this isn't a really woody bourbon, then something quite bizarre has happened.
It's a nice rich colour too. It's a very dark amber.
And as the internet is quick to tell us, Kentucky bourbon's not coloured, so we'll
cannot be coloured.
Take that to heart. And in which case, I would almost expect something a wee bit darker from that. That seems to me a little restrained for something that's had two types of wood applied to it. But anyway, heavily charred barrels, they do reduce some of the colour you get off that. That does not survive the charring process. But anyway, on the palate.
Well, that is a silky smooth bourbon.
It is. It's wild for 47%. It is so smooth and so Like, I will anyway, but I feel no need whatsoever to put much water in there. It's just, it's smooth, crisp, and sort of just flows along the tongue, whereas... I'll use another confusing analogy here. I visualise a lot of palates of things that I drink as the speed at which the palate moves. Some sort of big, spicy, sweet, cloying bourbons, they sort of sit on the tongue, and they take their time, and they move quite slowly, one flavour into the next, quite sluggishly. This one is like just a rushing river of fresh flavours. It rushes across the tongue into the finish, and one flavour sort of jumps to the next quite rapidly, and so the flow of it is quite rapid, and that sort of leads to that's always more refreshing to me. Despite being 47%, this is it's a pretty refreshing bourbon, and I think the wheat is beneficial there.
Yeah, the lack of a rye has cut through some of the spicy heat, but I did find this had quite a sort of a slow burning fuse on it. Immediately after I'd said that it was silky smooth, it kind of erupted into a cloud of spices and citrus.
It does kind of warm the esophagus. I mean, there's no getting away from 47%. That's going to hit you at some point.
So it's not a sharp, fiery spice, but cloves and star anise, kind of a spicy fruitcake kind of a spiciness.
Yeah, this is really working for me, and it's something that I didn't think was going to. On paper, this is kind of a funny idea. It's applying an aggressive wood strategy to what's one of the more lightweight bourbons out there, because it's got all this wheat in it and not any of the rye. Maker's Mark is intrinsically a light-bodied, sort of crisper, more ethereal bourbon. As far as bourbon gets, I mean, it still punches pretty heavy compared to a lot of Scotch whisky, but we're talking about bourbon here. And applying a big aggressive wood treatment to that kind of bourbon, I would have, on paper, said, no, that's the wrong bourbon to do that to. Do it to something more like Baker's or Booker's or something, some big fiery bourbon with a lot of body, a lot of weight to carry that extra wood. But for whatever reason, and I guess the bourbon pros do know what they're doing at the end of the day, this does work. It's sort of sweet and rich, but still fresh at the same time. It kind of meets in the middle in this unlikely but very pleasing sort of confluence of flavour and sensation.
There's a very long, very lingering, and actually quite satisfying smoky oak finish on that. That is a flavour that sits around on the tongue, so I think... that curious maturation process has allowed that to happen, and perhaps leaving out the rye also has let some more of the wood come through and some of the more delicate flavours from the other grains. I think it's been a good choice. Normally I would, the lack of rye, I would slightly bemoan that because I enjoy it so much. But in this case, it has allowed it to manifest in this really unique and quite idiosyncratic way, and it certainly works. Yeah,
I really do like this. It's a very different bourbon, but... if you're willing to sort of take a spin on it, I think it's different in a good way. It's interesting, different bourbon. It really, really does work for me.
It's got that familiar, quintessentially bourbon base, but it's built on it in some pretty unique ways.
Yeah, but that's not why I bought it. I bought this because, unlike regular Maker's Mark, this does not have a sub-market version. If I was to go down to the corner shop, liquor store, and buy a bottle of this, Maker's Mark normal, not Maker's 46, it would be, and we had this problem with the Woodford, it would be 40% ABV, and that would be not dead, but it would be significantly behind the American version. This one doesn't have a territorial version, so this is 47% in America all over the world, and that is what primarily drew me for this one. I've gone on sort of a crusade to find which bourbons are untainted by sort of corporate money saving, and which ones are. And this one I can tick the box on this one. This one, no matter where in the world you buy it, at least on the time of this recording, 2018, they do not have a cheapo version that they'll sting you with outside of the
problem.
US.
It seems to be, especially with the bigger, more established brands with much bigger market dominance, they have their regional versions, so a lower proof variety for release outside the US. But with usually with the smaller batch stuff, more boutique bourbon, or in cases like this, special releases, there's a better chance of getting a foolproof specimen out here in the colonies.
A wee bit more expensive than normal Maker's Mark, but not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like not noticeably so. As in, once you take in the percentage into account, I think you're actually making money on buying the 40% stuff here with the Maker's 46. So there you go. You won't get quite that same payback in the US, where the Maker's normal is, I think, much more like 45% ABV. Someone could correct me. Someone that actually lives where these bottles are sold normally. But 45, I think that sounds about right to me. But anyway, we should score it before I dither off into the next dimension. I really like this. This is really, really good for me. I'm going to go with 89 for this one. It's really, really solid bourbon. What do you think?
Yeah, very close score for me, 88. This is a solid bourbon to begin with that's been further enhanced by a unique mash and also a slight difference in the maturation process. So it's allowed a familiar concept to just take on a new form.
Won't be everyone's cup of tea, but for a bourbon that's different, in a world where most bourbons are not identical, but very much of a theme, this one is really, really quite different. So, yeah, go for it, I think. Thumbs up. Right, Makers 46, Slanger. We will see you very, very soon with, I think, another bourbon. It's going to be a bit of a bourbon-y weekend over here, so we'll crank another one right up. Stick around.